Hello, and a very warm welcome. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. My name is David Roth, and I have the privilege of being chairman of Honeycomb. I know that this is a warm and friendly group of people, so thank you very much indeed for joining us for this broadcast. We're all retailers, the team that's going to talk to you today. So we view this very much like a sort of, a friends and family retail event. And the purpose of this particular session is for us to explain a little bit about what we've done and to get your views, your questions, things we're doing right, things that you think we could do better with and on. And that's really is the point of the next 50 minutes or so. And there's a chat feature that you'll see on the site. So please, if you've got any questions or comments as we go through, please do write them on the chat and we'll deal with them and hopefully be able to answer some of those questions that you might have, some of the observations and some pointers for us as well during the end of the broadcast. Well, I suppose the best starting point is to talk a little bit about the hypothesis of what we have started to do at Honeycomb. This is a retail think tank for the AI age. And I suppose our starting hypothesis for a lot of the work and the thinking that we've been doing is the very nature of what will AI do to retail. And we view that in a positive way as opposed to a negative way, because I suppose our overarching principle and our founding thoughts are that unlike most other technology-led innovations, disruptions maybe, new ways of thinking, AI has the opportunity to fundamentally change the retail P&L. Now, most other technologies, I suppose, when you look at them in the cold and afterwards, yes, have improved efficiency for retailing, but actually have also increased costs significantly. And if you have a look at the retail ratios that I'm sure you're all familiar with on a daily basis, those fundamental ratios in terms of the ratio of percentage of sales to various different items on the P&L, those ratios haven't really changed since God was a boy. And we feel that AI has the capacity to be able to change those fundamentally. And that's going to allow retailers to have the freedom that they haven't had for a long time, which is to decide where to spend those additional savings. Now, some of them could indeed be returned to shareholders. I suppose our overall hypothesis is that quite a lot of those savings should be reinvested back into the physical aspect of retail, using AI tools and technologies to give the consumer a much better experience than they have had in the past. Maybe a move away from thinking maybe supply chain is the only way of adding value into business and customer service, creating unique propositions that would be done without AI, empowering sales assistants and people on the shop floor to have the knowledge and the information to really satisfy customers' wants and needs, and indeed anticipate those as well. And that will have, I suppose, the double whammy of being able to save a reasonable amount of money, reinvest that into the business, return sales for shareholders, and then generate incremental sales on the basis of having a much better, strong proposition. Now, we haven't just sort of thought about this in isolation. We have done a lot of research, and you're going to hear some of the outputs of that as we go through our session today. So 240 workflows, retail workflows, painstakingly and forensically are gone through in order to understand where AI can play a significant part in improving those workflows, generating economic returns, and doing things that haven't been possible to do before. And 2,200 use cases we've looked at, we've created, we've developed to help people along the journey. Now, on today's webinar, we have a number of fellows of Honeycomb, and we'll be introducing them as we go through. All of them are seasoned professionals. All of them have immense experience, as indeed I have, at the sharp end of retail. These aren't people who deal in theory. These people who have been responsible for retail P&Ls. They've shared the pain of Monday morning trading meetings, the joy when things go well, and the despair when your like-for-likes are slightly off what you forecasted. So we fundamentally understand the issues and the pain and the joy that you go through in being within retail. And therefore we bring a lens to that of the ability to understand where the benefits can sit in a very practical way in which those can be realized. So we're going to share with you a lot of that research along the way. We're also going to share with you some of the things that we've discussed as a team of fellows from Honeycomb. Every week we have a session, and we're going to share some of the observations that we have made over the course of some of the sessions in the last few weeks. So I'm now going to hand over to Don Bassell. A very warm welcome.
Thank you, David. What's really important is to know is AI is a business issue. My name is Don Bassell, and I've been involved in retail for over 40 years, primarily in convenience retail. Most recently, I was the CFO of a Fortune 500 retail convenience store chain that had over 1,600 company-operated locations and over 1,800 dealer locations in 33 states. One of the key things I've learned throughout my career that technology serves as a solution for business problems. Many times, technology is presented to companies with promises of handling all kinds of issues and not really focused on the key business challenges the company may be facing. Too many times, modern technology is introduced to a company and then relegated to the IT department to implement rather than having the business unit in order to drive the change. Technology is wonderful, but only to the point that the problem can be defined and then using automation to help address the issue. Artificial intelligence represents a remarkable transformative technology. However, it is crucial to first identify the specific business problem that we aim to address. Before any AI technology can be applied, it is critically important to address the business objectives that are trying to be accomplished and then further dive into the root causes of what may be causing the issues. Many times, this takes a deep dive with people in the organization who are doing the job to figure out what the root causes are. While management may be aware of the issue, they are most likely not aware of what is causing the issue or conversely, what can be done about it. From our experience and research, we find that many people looking at AI as a cost-cutting effort, and while there may be many manual tasks that can be automated, it is also important to look at AI as a revenue-enhancing tool. As a good example of this, when we look at the issue of retail dealing with employee turnover, many people approach this problem as a cost issue, recruiting costs, training, and overtime being worked for open positions. Well, this is all true, and there's real opportunity. The real opportunity is a loss in revenue due to employees who do not understand how to properly serve the customer. I'm going to give you a good example from something I most recently experienced. I was out in the market at a well-known retailer to purchase a new computer monitor. When I asked the salesperson what the differences were in the monitors that I was looking at, the individual did not know and had to go look at the tags and read them, and still did not give me comfort that they understood the product. Then I asked about the connections to the docking station. The customer service associate looked at me and asked me what a docking station was. Not only did I not buy the monitor, but it gave me the perception this retailer did not have the expertise to meet my needs as a consumer. On the other hand, I was in another retail office supply store looking for a paper shredder. I told the salesperson I wanted to buy a simple shredder, and the customer service associate advised me to look at a device that didn't just simply shred paper, but also did a crosscut. She also showed me a higher-end model, but mentioned it was excessive for my needs, recommending the midpoint selection instead. As a result, I wanted to buy several more items to increase my market basket at that store. That relationship between the the customer service associate and the customer is critical. As we know, the best way to boost sales is through increased frequency and increased market basket. In this simple example, we may try and develop tools that access a large database of frequent questions so the customer service associates are familiar with the products and give the consumer the confidence to come back and buy more. For AI to be successful, it is important from a business perspective that we accomplish the following. Develop a common language of terms and make sure that our data is clean. I'm sure many of you have seen the same question being asked of several departments and getting different answers depending on where they access the data. This could be as simple as people using different systems, different cutoffs, or simply different terminology. So it's key as you move through this process that the data is clean, understood, and consistent. Right now, the news of AI is every place you look. It's critical we identify the pain points from a business perspective before applying any AI solutions. It is also important to get buy-in among the leadership team and get some quick wins. The AI journey will be a long one. There's no bad magic bullet out there. It is important to get started, and the best way to get started is for business leaders to identify practical business issues or pain points that can be easily solved. After getting a few quick wins and potentially some failures or places you should not go, this will enable your company to begin that journey. Remember, AI is about solving business problems. It's about applying technologies to help companies move forward with business problems. And with that, I'll now turn it over to Andrew.
Thank you, Don. I'm going to talk about capabilities and not just technologies. And we're going to look at workflows and some business transformation ideas. And all together, we'll be talking about sort of traditional machine learning as well. So it's not just generative AI. That's just one of the new flavors. So my name is Andrew Grant. I'm a founder with retail and CPG marketing experience with some pretty major household brand names. And I have a deep tech background previously as executive chairman of AI spin-out Satalia, known as WPP's DeepMind. And I'm a former AI lead at Imagination Technologies. In all, 15 or so is experience in AI. And I've also run Future of Retail innovation events from London to Shanghai. But today, let's talk about AI capabilities for retail. So we've had AI for some time now, machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, natural language, so on, to which we've added Gen AI and now special agents. Everyone's involved in looking at AI right now, and software vendors have integrated machine and deep learning and generative AI into their enterprise apps. Your marketing team, your IT team are accessing large language models such as ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, or Google Gemini, and so on. And they're using it for content generation and to write code. You're already using AI with natural language understanding in searches and Gen AI, so there will be pilot projects around your company that you may not even be aware of at this point. Wherever you go, AI is already among us. So everyone's doing it, but is everyone actually doing it really well? Maybe not. The issue here is to get stuff right when often it's a bit confused, a little bit scattershot. There's a cacophony out there and it can be quite chaotic. Vendors are saying they've got new AI features that they want you to pay for. You've got shareholders that are saying, what's your AI strategy? And you've got people within the business with their own pet projects, likes and dislikes and so on. But you have to rise above that. You have to focus on the business problems and the business outcomes. That's what's important. You need to focus on a business problem that leverages the capabilities of AI to speed workflows and augment the power of humans. You need a business plan for AI-powered retail if you can get all the benefits that are due to you. So, for instance, if we take a capability such as the one that Don was mentioning, and we talk about employee turnover and a capability such as employee retention, well, US retailers replace 3 of every 4 hourly employees annually. 3 out of 4. Ouch. The employee turnover issue is a big one, and the US Bureau of Labor Statistics stated that roughly 60% of all US retail employees quit or were fired in calendar year 2024. Then a 2022 Korn Ferry survey, perhaps affected by the recent pandemic, found an annual turnover of over 75% of retail hourly wage workers, a number that climbed to 85% of part-time hourly wage employees. Equally concerning, as measured by loss of productivity, organisation wisdom, and the next generation of leadership, were the turnover numbers for store management. 17.7% of store managers, nearly 1 in 5, left within the year, and nearly 30% of assistant store managers walked out of the door. So if you think of the costs of onboarding, training, and getting them to the stage where these people are being really valuable, and then essentially throwing up to 75% of them away, that doesn't make any sense. So if we look at the areas affected, such as employee productivity and job satisfaction, relationships with managers, etc., well, how can AI help? It can streamline recruiting, onboarding, training, scheduling, stress analysis, and so on, and improve hiring accuracy, reduce training time, and of course, enhance employee satisfaction. And that pays off as it flows through to customers, because the more your employees are focused on customer support and working to help the customer, the better it is for you and your business. Let's take an example. In your call center, your customer support people have got inbound calls coming in. People may have been waiting 20 minutes to actually talk to a human, and they're getting a little bit annoyed. Now your associate's going to have to manage that dissatisfaction, which can be quite stressful. And maybe also the caller, for them, English isn't their first language, so that could make things more difficult for your employee. So what if you could have a little bit of AI on there that basically is transcribing every word that's being said, and then it's looking for keywords in the conversation. As the caller articulates their problem, it will take the keywords, check against your own database of previous conversations where people have called in and asked about a particular issue, and then bring up the potential solutions that have worked in the past, maybe in rank order. And as the conversation continues, that could be augmented further with suggestions as to how to use a product or when it will next be in stock. So particularly with long lists of products, that could really help the associate who's resolving the call. So now you can resolve the issue for the customer faster to make them feel happier. And it's a quick win for the employee because suddenly their job is not as stressful. They can satisfy the customer in the shortest possible time. So you're saving time on the call because the answers are already right there in front of them, right here, right now. And that's potentially one of the quickest wins you could have. And our Honeycomb research has indicated that there are many simple use cases that you can work with, but there are also ways of building on top of that, actually compounding the value that AI can deliver. So let's expand this example. Supposing you've built this for your customer support team, you build it for your complaints team, you build it out further, and you give this to the associate who's on the shop floor. So when they get asked a really difficult question, they can answer it based on what the solutions are and all the other situations where that question's been asked. All they'll need is a mobile, tablet or whatever, and an earpiece that connects with the store's AI. They can literally ask their friendly assistant AI avatar that can help them with the answer to that question. So you've helped your associate, they'll be happier, they'll feel more empowered, they'll feel augmented, and they can accelerate what they're doing because of that. So if you consider areas like training and the cost of retaining your staff, this makes it much easier for job satisfaction and for the person actually growing within their role. So that's a win. And in Don's example a minute ago, you can find that docking station. You can work out what works, what goes with what, because you can just ask it the question, is it in or out of stock? When will it next be in? What other colours is it available in? And so on. But hands on a minute. If we can put this in the hands of the call centre, we can put it in the hands of the shop assistant dealing directly face-to-face with customers. Maybe we could do a version for the customer as well. So essentially the customer agrees when they walk into the store, scans a QR code or something, says, yes, I'm happy to interact with the store's AI. And then basically he or she can ask questions to their mobile. Where can I find such and such? And it'll direct you to where that is in the store based on the store plan. It could suggest go-withs and even use pricing offers. There are so many opportunities to make life easier and reduce the friction, make the associates and the customers happier. It's a quick win because if employees quit because they feel they're badly trained or they can't respond to customers and feel under pressure, well, here's a way to resolve all of that. Not quite in an instant, but almost. This is a very doable example, and companies are working on this as we speak. So if we look at the capabilities slide, let's match the business need to an AI capability and deliver the business benefits. Here are the 7 capabilities we identified in our research. 1, automating workflows and decision-making. 2, optimizing processes and decisions. 3, using sense and classify for pattern recognition and hidden correlations. Number 4, generative, creating content and code faster than we can imagine. 5, predict, likely outcomes, scenario planning, alternatives. 6, recommendations to shoppers of best items, new ideas, go-withs, and whatever the next action should be. And number 7, advise, helping senior decision makers to understand all of their options and what their next best action should be. Now at Honeycomb, we analysed 50 15 operating areas and 242 workflows. And we found out that AI can create value in multiple ways. You just have to identify what those problems are and then align the AI capabilities to your own business issue. Our analysis identified 2,200, 2,200 AI use cases where AI could really help. And then we looked at what that uplift would be, what the specific business outcome in numbers, percentages, time saved would be, because this is a business first approach. We then created an interactive model, our AI and Retail Explorer. What that does is amazing. Essentially, you can interact with it, ask it a question, and it'll draft your business AI approach, maybe even a strategy for you, suggesting projects, and it'll indicate potential areas of business benefit that you might want to look at and realize. So you can lean in. If you look at the projects that you could work on, so here's an example. We quite like something that McKinsey talked about, which is a 2x2 model. So that is, pick 2 simple quick win projects, or onesies, as Mike will explain a little bit later, that are easier to implement, and pick 2 that are a little bit longer, a little bit more complex, but will create value a few months down the line. The first ones you can implement within days, weeks, and just a couple of months, and that you can learn from. Learn by doing. Mike Ralich will explain more about onesies and identify those first projects by business value. So find a couple of easy wins, focus on those, and just get started. Because the best way to build your AI literacy is to be engaging with AI projects. The more you do, the more you level up your organization too. And then the other critical success factor you need to think about is the data that you have. Data is so important because it is literally the fuel that AI runs on. You need to know where your data is, what you're doing with it, and what its strengths and limitations are. Now that, even in itself, can be quite tricky with data that you've collected over years. You need to make sure that you can access it and can it be used for this specific purpose. You want to be certain about the data privacy issues, ethics, and explainability. To help you through this, we created a data maturity model. Essentially, it's a readiness kit, a readiness model for what you're doing with your data, who works on your data, what you need to know. We can walk you through that step by step and help you through to what for a lot of people, can be one of the most difficult areas to actually work in, particularly if you're not a data professional. We don't need to get down to details of ETL, extract, transform, and load. But what we can do is help you get started. And all these proficiencies are areas that we've worked on and are created by CIOs. Now let's talk about the path to value, how to achieve compounding value. I'm just going to walk you through this slide because this explains about how we're going to get from the first basics all the way to agentic workflows. These agentic workflows and agents are simply task-oriented pieces of software that act like little robots for you, little helpers. To give an example, today, if you ask ChatGPT to send an email, it will say it doesn't send emails. It can only answer questions. However, if you have an email helper, an agent that will take the output from ChatGPT and drop it into an email and then send it to someone that you need to inform or to a customer, the special agent will complete all of those tasks. So if you want to take notes from a meeting, summarize the meeting, identify follow-ups, next actions, and who has to do them, but also put a meeting with someone in their calendar to brief them. It can be proposing the meeting, checking your calendar for a workable time, check the other participants' calendars, and send out the relevant emails and agenda items for you. That could be done by a number of different agents. In retail, we need to think about how different processes can be automated so that multiple things can be achieved and, of course, carefully orchestrated as we do them. It could automate a response to a problem by researching it on the web, or another version could speed up matching invoices, checking inventory, auditing, procurement, or a tax situation. There are some really great opportunities that can come from agentic workflows. You just need to, and here's looking at the slides, assess the pain points. Initially, just do some mundane task automation, by which I mean hand over the drudge work to a software agent. Then work on your data readiness using the data readiness maturity model, generate workflow-specific solutions, and compound the results with force multipliers, about which we'll hear in a minute from John. Let's go back to that example of the help desk, the customer support desk. At the end of that call, the agent software agent could actually create a summary of the conversation. It could generate the next steps. It could then send an email to the customer thanking them for asking the question and giving them additional how-to information, or advising them about whoever they need to contact or what they might need to do if they've got a problem with the product. Likewise, it can then send an email to someone else in the organization, asking them to do the piece of work that needs to be done and then checking on it later. AI capabilities will help augment your people. And the best way going forward is it won't be that AI will replace people, but people in using AI will replace just people. With that thought, I'd like to hand over to John Stein to take you further forward on where and how value can be created. So, John, let's explore where the ROI is going to come from. Thank you very much for listening.
Andrew, thank you. And I'm John Stein, 15 years in the retail industry and then some global responsibilities at the Intel Corporation, Cisco Systems, and then the Linux Foundation. A number of recent papers have suggested that some 80% of all AI projects across all industries, and certainly including retail, fail to deliver intended or expected results. Now, the reasons are many, and they include the persistent challenge of incomplete and dirty and siloed data, issues that Don and Andrew have spoken to here already. But two other reasons stand out. One is the shiny object, the dreaded shiny object syndrome, where implementations are guided by the perceived coolness of a technology, and to Don's good point, not driven by business needs. The other is, and important, is a clear misunderstanding of how fast artificial intelligence can and will create tangible, measurable value. Management expectations and vendor promises in this age can be way, way overstated. Now, our research over the past year has taught us this. Single AI implementations, such as pilot projects, will most likely create and capture small marginal gains. Now, those small marginal gains over time, and when they are sharing data and are adjacent to other implementations, and that data is informing other workflows, those small marginal gains will, as Andrew said, they'll compound. That's when things take off. Now, a marginal gain, by definition, is generally measured in single digits, often in a percentage of single digits. Now, with returns like that, say of a pilot project, cynics will sneer and management in the corner office will just, roll their eyes and lift their hands. Why are we doing this? But hold on. Now, if we repeat and replicate those small gains day after day, quarter after quarter, and we add another capability, another functionality, and sometimes we automate a decision point or automate a communication within a workflow, and now we're achieving, let's say, a 2% gain instead of a 1% gain. And we now replicate that. And we use the gains to inform or accelerate processes over here or over there. And now it's 2% plus 1% every time, every day, every week, every quarter. Then things begin to move. We've researched a lot of workflows, as Andrew and David have said, and we ask how the capabilities, not the technologies, but the capabilities of artificial intelligence could create tangible value. It wasn't just one way, one workflow. It wasn't throw this AI at it and it will make magic. No, it's the capabilities, perhaps creating value in 10 or more ways per workflow, each producing relatively small gains, but gains that will compound, multiply, and grow. Also emerging from our research was a recognition of something we call force multiplication. Critical topic, critical issue. It's data that's cleansed, of course, and tagged, and it's easily accessible, that can inform dozens of retail workflows. And we think there are 3 of these for every retailer. The first and most noteworthy in this era of generative AI is detailed customer and cohort insight. The more you know, the more personalized you can be. Without this, personalization goes nowhere. Detailed customer and cohort insight. The second, and critical for all aspects of merchandising, is internal and external data that signals demand. Demand in quantity, by trend, by style, by price point, by type. Demand signals, I should say, that translate to catchment areas, to store, and to shelf for merchandising and marketing. The third is customer employee sentiment data. Customer and employee sentiment data. For customers, it's keeping ears and eyes open to what they think, what they're saying about the brand, its products, its services, its fulfillment. For employees, it's part of what Don and Andrew have spoken to, of increasing employee retention, learning and resolving small problems before they become big ones. The data clearly shows that investment in data that leads to force multiplication will drive compounding value. So to wrap up, and to turn it now to Mike Relich, gains will be small at first. Get used to it. Don't be surprised. Especially in a single implementation. No one should be frightened by that. But when you land and expand in your data, expand in your functionality, and when you invest in your data, and especially in the force multipliers, the slow and the small will soon compound into the big and the fast. And with that, let me turn it to colleague Mike Relich.
Yeah, thanks, John. Let me introduce myself. My name is Mike Relich. I've got over 40 years of retail experience. I'm going to betray my age here. I've been a CEO, COO, and CIO at retailers such as PacSun, Eddie Bauer, Lucky Brand, Crate and Barrel, and Guess. I currently serve as a non-executive board member for Tilly's, a publicly listed teen retailer, and I'm also an advisor to a handful of retail-focused technology companies. But so now that we got that over with, let's talk about how to actually get started with AI. Not as a curiosity, but as a cohesive business investment. Not scattershot, not science fiction, something small, real, and valuable. So I say, don't launch a pilot. Let's make an investment. So too often, companies treat AI as a side project, a chatbot here, a pricing tool there, but no focus, no real outcomes. So we're advocating a different approach here. Your first cohesive investment. This means solving a real business problem. I mean, this goes back to what Don was talking about. One with clear pain, one with measurable value, and one that can grow. In other words, don't launch an investment, launch a onesie. So now you might ask, well, what's a onesie? A onesie is one human, one workflow, and one data source. A onesie is the smallest unit of AI transformation. You're not boiling the ocean here. You're automating one task for one person and one role and using one core data stream. The beauty here is it's surgical, it's fast, and it proves the value of AI without overextending your team or your budget. So why start with a onesie, you might ask? Well, there are a few key reasons why this works. One, you get quick wins with a measurable ROI. Two, it limits risk and it lets your team learn. And you can build on that success, moving from onesies to workflows to systems. And here's the important bit. There are many AI startups right now that are actively looking for proof of concept partners. They want to partner with you and use your domain expertise. They'll work with you to validate their tech in a real-world setting, and that means you can often pilot cutting-edge capabilities with very low upfront investment. So both Andrew and David talked about the interactive tool and the 242 workflows. Well, among those 242, there's about 50 to 55 of those are actually onesies. So these are actually use cases or workflows that you could actually launch a pilot on. But, just let me touch on a couple examples. They might be relevant to you, they might not, but these are some possibilities. One is in store ops, basically schedule optimization. Store managers have to develop schedules. Well, here, if you could take historical traffic and labor data, AI can actually help you automate where and how you schedule people. Not only will this result in a reduction in labor costs, but you'll have people available when you have the traffic and there'll be a higher conversion rate. Next will be merchandising. Markdown planning is always a chore. and you have your planners going through it, and they're wading through their spreadsheets, and hopefully they get it more right than they get it wrong. But taking sell-through data and promotion calendar, AI can help you basically look at your promotional calendar and suggest when those markdowns should be taken to maximize gross margin. Next one's customer service. Think about it. Everybody who runs e-com has basically a call center. And the number one number of calls in the call center are Wizmo. Where is my order? Now, these are low value orders, and it costs you a lot of money to have an agent answer those questions. So basically, by taking an API into your order system, you can offload those with an AI chatbot to deal with those, and then have the high value calls go to the call center. And Don talked about basically customer service, and you and Andrew talked about basically the turnover in retail. Well, think about it. How many times have you actually gone to a register and you have a non-standard transaction, and the associate isn't trained well? They're stumbling over how to do that and trying to call their manager and such. Well, you can take all that actually. And and what do we expect? We expect them to go to some portal and wade through hundreds of documents and find out the standard operating procedure. Well, all this can easily be loaded into an LLM, and basically the customer or the associate can query and instantly find out the answer. I mean, this to me is a core use case that almost every retailer should do. And then the last one I'll talk about is side UX. Basically, e-com now is, it's under a lot of pressure, especially as variable cost increase and all the cost increase. But, and what do we have? We have basically site merchandisers figuring out the order of items on the website. Well, using AI, you can take clickstream data, and it can help them suggest the placement of data, because we know that customers don't usually go below the fold, or maybe they'll go twice. And it can actually help optimize the placement of data, along with inventory, so you get the highest conversion rate. Each of these that I just described are small, self-contained onesies. But if it works, you can scale this across the business. So now let's talk about the framework and how do you pick the right one? So to me, when you select your first investment, we recommend 4 filters. 1, is the pain real? Can we quantify it? 2, is it AI solvable? Can AI automate it? Can it predict, or can it augment? Is it measurable? How are we going to know if this worked? And then lastly, can it scale? Will success unlock more value? If the answer is yes across the board, you found a winner. So why start small and win big? Well, let me reiterate. AI success is not a moonshot. It's a flywheel. Your first cohesive investment should deliver results in about 60 to 90 days. It should build internal confidence within the organization. It should train your team to work with AI, and it should set you up for bigger wins down the road. And with the current ecosystems of startups hungry to prove themselves, the timing has never been better to partner and prototype affordably. So from onesie to enterprise, from the onesie works, the flywheel turns. So pilot one team, one use case, measure, track the ROI, not just model accuracy. You make sure it's adding value. Refine it, tune the solution based on results. And then once you get success, expand it across the teams or across your problems. We've seen this approach succeed again and again. And the beauty here, it's lean, it's fast, and as Don talked about, is business-led, which is the core factor of success. So, call to action. So here's my challenge to all of you. What's the one thing that your team grumbles about constantly, but it never gets fixed? Start there. That's your onesie. Pick one workflow, one human, and one data source, and ask, could AI solve this faster, cheaper, or better? If the answer is yes, that's your first cohesive investment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David so he can wrap this up. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, John, Don, Andrew, John, and Mike. been a few comments that we've got actually by email. So maybe I can start with you, John, if you wouldn't mind. I suppose the question is, when does a sort of a onesie, in a sense, start to become a full scale project? How do you understand, I suppose, the relationship between doing something that is small, gives a result, and how does that then manifests itself into a project?
I would turn that and ask Mike to join me in that conversation, but I think Mike gave good guidance. It's a 60 to 90 day learning process with that onesie. What value has been created? What change has happened in the workflow? What are there more hours now available? Is there more knowledge now engaged in a decision? Has something changed, and that change is positive? Now, can that be now replicated with another person or in a similar situation? We use the phrase land and expand. And so from that onesie, now it begins to move into a project when it's the second person or the second workflow, or you're using similar data in a separate situation. So it's rolling from that onesie and increasing if you will, multiplying and increasing the complexity. Now you've created a project. Now you're building something. Mike, your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, once you have that onesie and you've actually generated ROI, you've instilled confidence in the team. Now you can look at that pain point that you solved and look at other pain points that can be actually solved with that same data. And then to me, you expand it, as John so eloquently said, across people, across functions, and across pain points.
Thank you very much indeed. I think there's another area that people have asked a couple of things around. It'd be nice to get Andrew, I think, your perspective on first, which is the whole sort of notion of at which point do you think you should start to be generating an economic return from creating and developing an AI project? And I suppose the extent to which you go from one project to another or one onesie to another and mop up the financial returns, or is that a secondary thing?
Yeah, I that's a really good question, and I think the way to deal with it is look at the onesies that you're about to work with, and you can rank them in terms of ease of implementation, potential gains, and for some of them you can start working and get a pre-instant return on it. Not something that you can roll out everywhere, but maybe it's one section of a team that's dealing it, or the one person, one workflow type thing. And if you automate that, you can solve a problem for someone, give them access to a database and so on. So I think it's quite simple to go from that point of starting something off. And then in some cases, you might have a good result within a couple of weeks. Certainly people can often build an initial implementation of a say an agentic approach within 2 to 4 weeks. Then obviously you will iterate it, learn and iterate, test it and improve it. So it won't be production ready at that time. You won't want to roll it out to 4,000 people, but you can start seeding that in teams, getting the feedback, and then build on that from that point onwards.
Thank you. John, I wonder, and this is actually a question for me, so used to those, but I haven't asked you this one before. But John, I wonder, I mean, you've sat in and still do in the finance director's seats. We know what it's like going to the finance director and trying to get money for resources. First answer tends to be no. And then it's sort of a little bit more about, well, okay, so what is the question? And where's the return going to be? I just wonder whether, from your perspective, as the man responsible for the overall profitability of the business, do you view AI investments in any different way? Do you view investments in the past? Is it the same sort of criteria, or is there something that is intrinsically different about an AI project and the way in which it starts to do returns?
No, and that's a good question. I mean, I think it's like any project you do. It's does it have the return, and can you measure that return? I mean, I think a lot of times the problem that I've seen is people propose these great projects, and the software is going to do this, but there's no way to measure it. I think it's key to be able to have the measures and do the post-investment return. So, it is no different than anything from building a store to, maybe, refurbishing, to put in food service, to do whatever. It's the same kind of investment. And that's the way it's been. As I've been listening to the conversation about starting small, I still remember back in the 90s when we first started scanning in stores and we first started scanning with purchases. And we did that with 1 or 2 stores to make, we didn't believe this. We said, oh, you got to put a price book and you got to get the taxes right. And you started small and then you put it at the register. Again, started small. And once we got it right, we expanded it to the whole fleet. And we expanded to like maybe a district or to an area, to a state. And it just exploded. But you had to start it small, get it right, get the problems worked out. And once you got the problems worked out, the training, everything like that, it just made huge gains. But if you didn't take that first step to do that, I'd see huge failures also. So I like the onesie approach, because the onesie approach then proves the concept and then goes forward. But I think from a financial standpoint, anything that I would be looking at, it's no different than an investment, an acquisition, or anything else. Where am I going to get the best return on my capital invested?
One thing that Don and if I may jump in here, Don and Andrew and Mike all emphasize is starting at the pain point as opposed to starting at the technology. And by starting at the pain point, when you ease the pain, you create value inherently. Versus, I want to test technology. Well, I'm not, yes, the technology works, but is there a business value? Well, we don't know. Maybe so. But again, when you start at the pain point and you make the pain go away, value has been created. And that's just a critical core issue here that we're emphasizing about value creation.
Yeah, and if I may, John, that's a really good point, because a lot of times I've seen people come in with software solutions, and this is going to do this, this, and this, and somebody says, "Well, is that our biggest issue right now?" And a lot of times you don't get the buy-in because it's not our biggest issue. And I've seen small wins where people, once they see the pain point go away, they're really cooperative in that implementation.
Well, I think that brings us maybe to the final question, really, which is, should AI sit somewhere different in a retail organization? And to your sort of pointers, is this our most important thing to do? Sometimes it requires the CEO, the finance director, to actually say, well, it might not be our most important thing to do this week, but it is the most important thing we need to do in order to strategically position our business to be able to compete with competitors who will be using this technology, and therefore will be getting an advantage. And therefore, I am going to make it the most important. And that really requires that to come out of the CEO and finance director.
Well, if I can sort of jump in there, just to say, yeah, we're going through a massive change, and AI is touching so many areas of business, and for all the people, who are working in it and our customers. So I think in that sense, it really is about trying to find the best way for your organization to put a team together. But it doesn't have to be something that's completely external to what's going on. The closer it is to everyone having AI literacy and working together on something that's really important. And if you want to go and change the way one of the groups of people works, whether it's the sales team or the category management or whatever it is, you want to be able to be in that situation where, or analyzing the cohorts, you want to have people talking with other people and learning from people that are doing the job day in, day out, and understanding exactly what problems they have and the pain points they have, so that any AI solutions you generate are actually appropriate to solve the problem and generate a business result. So I don't know if the others want to comment on that too.
I'd like to add into that, Andrew, if I could. I found the best way that we had to solve issues and what needed to be done was to spend time at the store and watch what they go through every day. And I can tell you that this is an issue that people talk about. I think we all believe that it's not should you, it's if you don't, you'll be left behind. So everybody's talking about the buzzwords and software companies are coming. But the thing that I found in my career that at least that we've done as a group and whatever is try to get to the lowest level, lowest, the transaction, the most valuable level, where the customer interfaces with the, with the customer service associated. As I reminded people, we never rang a register inside our office. So I think it's so important that management teams and subgroups get into the locations to really try and understand pain points. And as I said before, don't ask the leadership team to identify pain points because they may think they know what they are, but they don't. And you always find out, you get magic gems when you go down, and then you can move up from there. And I've seen so many times you get quick wins by talking to people that are doing it every day. And they'll tell you, this is a problem. If I could do this, then it would make things much better because they're the ones that are facing with the customers every day. And that's where you get the best ideas.
Well, I think very, very sound advice. I know when I moved from consulting into retail in terms of having operational responsibilities, I learned a very vast lesson, which is it doesn't happen on a PowerPoint chart. It only happens if it happens within the stores. Now, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up because we're almost out of time. It leads me really to answer the last question that was asked. Okay, so what can we do from here? Well, we are a bunch of educators. We're a bunch of people that run think tanks. We're a bunch of people who can run seminars and workshops in order to help you understand how you can harness the power of this disruptive but technology that is going to fundamentally reshape the landscape of retail, and to help you ensure that you can do that in a way that fits the type and size and scale of your business, the speed within which you want to operate, to create a glide path to be able for you to turn onesies into a collection of business transforming elements to your business and a way that you can dramatically over time reshape your P&L to be able to deliver better propositions to customers within the stores to enable you to grow. Well, on behalf of Don, Andrew, John, and Mike, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's been a great pleasure. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much indeed.